Hello and welcome to September's book review. Come on then, up you come. Come on then. If you want to come up. Jeff, sorry. So yeah, welcome to September's book review. It's felt like a very long month. Looking at the first book I've got to review, I thought I read that like 3 months ago, but it turns out it was only this month. It's been long. But then, it's been quite eventful September for me. If you saw Sunday's video, you will see that I am engaged. If you haven't, I will link that somewhere for you. So yeah, I guess that's probably why the month has felt quite so long. But we did still manage to read 4 books, so not all is lost. Not that anything was lost in the first place, I don't know why I said that. Just come up then, I told you. Come up. We'll sit on your cushion. What was I going to say? Sorry if the lighting's a bit dodgy, it's very grey and windy outside and I only have the big light for lighting and it doesn't really do a lot. A ring light is on my Christmas list, so it may be coming in the near future, we shall see. But let's just get on with the books, that's why you're here, so let's just get on with it. So if you watched August's book review, you will have known that I started the Rosie series and I read the first 2 again last month, and in September I read the 3rd one, which is the Rosie Result, still by Graeme Simsion. Can you sit on your cushion please, because all your little tippy tappy toes are getting rather annoying. Yes, this is why I never do a book review with the dog in the room. Oh, and now Pete is home, so all is going well. Right, Pete is now back, the dog is now with Pete. Book, trying to talk about it, Rosie Result by Graeme Simsion. I liked that this was 10 years after the end of the Rosie effect. I had to think what there was then. It was nice to see where the characters were, like with a big period of time past them. So that was good. However, this book's named after Rosie and she didn't seem to appear very often. She was a bit of a nothing character. The book's really focused on the relationship between Don and his son Hudson, which I liked the concept on it, but Don and Hudson are very similar characters in personality terms, so it made the book a little bit samey for me. As I said, I very much enjoyed exploring these characters further and getting to see where they are now, but Rosie's always been my favourite character in these books and she just doesn't really appear, and the Rosie that does appear is not like the Rosie in the other books, to put it that way. I also missed some of the other characters, so Jean doesn't really appear very often, nor does his wife. Dave and Sonia don't appear very often. The drummer whose name has escaped me, he doesn't appear very often, and I kind of missed that sort of second tier of characters that add to Don and Rosie's relationship. And as I say, that's because they focus on this relationship with his son, which is important, I get it, but yeah, I missed those. And also I got really confused because I thought that Dave and Sonia's kid had changed its name because they talk about Xena all the way through, and I was like, I swear they called that kid Rosie after Rosie because they helped deliver the baby. And then I thought, oh, maybe because they're Italian it was Rosina and that's why she's named Xena, but I may be guessing. I got very confused for quite a while about that. However, the Rosie Project series, or the Rosie series, or however you call this trilogy, it does have consistencies all the way through, which I like. They don't tend to completely do a 180 on something that they've said in a previous book, and my favourite is definitely the fact that Don always calls Rosie the most beautiful woman in the world kind of thing, and that never changes, and that is something very nice because obviously in 10 years time and you've had a kid, as a woman you will have changed, but for him to still call her that, it was just really sweet and I liked that a lot. Well, as I say, it feels like an awfully long time since I read this book, like months, not weeks. So I don't remember it a whole lot, so that will say something about it as well. Definitely the first book in this series is better than all of the others, but this was good. I did enjoy it a lot. I just don't I just wish there was more Rosie in it, basically. This is book number 1 for September. Then the second book that I read was I Capture the Castle by Dodi Smith. So me and my brother had sort of a Dodi off. He lent me this one and I lent him 101 Dalmatians. It has to be said that 101 Dalmatians is better than this. I do like Dodi Smith. I do think she's a good writer. She certainly comes out with some funny bits, but 101 Dalmatians for me is a better book, and as is the Starlight Barking. I much preferred those to this one. This one did feel a little bit difficult to read at times, particularly when we had a whole like 40-50 pages of her just feeling sorry for herself and being really melancholic, and just I got fed up basically. It's interesting because it's all about sort of first love and first taste in boys and all of that kind of stuff, but it's of a very different era where young teenage 19-year-olds whatever are actively seeking out husbands, and rich husbands at that. This was only written in the 40s or the 50s, so I wasn't aware that that was still a thing, but I guess it was. Cassandra, the main character, is described as consciously naive, and I think that's a great way to describe her, because yes, she is naive, but you kind of get the impression that she knows it and she's doing it as an act, or at least I did while reading it, so I thought that was a good description of her. And as I say, although it wasn't my favourite book to read, it did have some really good parts. There was a really great story about them thinking that a bear was on the train, but it was a fur coat. If you've read the book, you'll know what I'm talking about. I did like that a lot. That did make me giggle. And there's some brilliant like lines, like Dodi Smith always has. For example, miserable people cannot afford to dislike each other, which I thought was cool. I liked that. You got worse things to be miserable about. You can't dislike each other as well. It just heaps it all in. One thing I didn't get though is how is the family in this book considered so highly regarded and so well off kind of thing, just because they live in a castle? Because they have zero money. They are so skint, like skinter than skint. And I don't get why Stephen, who is like the son of their old maid who passed away, he's then just been kept on with the family. I don't get why he calls them sir and, you know, miss and all of that when he's the one giving the money. He's the one that's making sure there's food for them. So I didn't get that at all. For me, the first half was more enjoyable. It does pretty much focus... The way I'd put it is, so it's Cassandra's writing it, but she's telling her sister Rose's story, not her own story, although she's in it a lot and it's her feelings and it's her thoughts on things. And I get the impression, not that I've read very much of Jane Austen, but I get the impression that Cassandra's read a lot of Jane Austen, and that's kind of the style that she's going on to write it. Yeah? Get what I'm talking about? So, I liked that it was Rose's story told by her sister. I think that was clever. Yeah. I liked it, but not my favourite. Probably the best way of describing it. If you're going to read one Dodi Smith in your life, read 101 Dalmatians. I might be rattling through this pretty quickly because my battery is going to die, but the third book I read was Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. I have only ever read one Sophie Kinsella, and that was Confessions of a Shopaholic, the first book, and I didn't like it at all. I can't remember why, I just remember really disliking it, so I've never picked up a Sophie Kinsella again, and probably wouldn't have, but my mum gave me a heap of books and this was one of them. So I was kind of intrigued to see how I would feel about Sophie Kinsella again, as I haven't read it. Oh, I must have been in my teens when I read Shopaholic, so good 10 years or so since I've probably read one of her books. I did struggle, not because this is a difficult read, this is a very easy read, particularly after you've just read I Capture the Castle. This is super easy, but I struggled because the main character has the exact name of one of my friends. Like, first name and surname is the same as one of my friends. So I did struggle a little bit to read it because I kept thinking of my friend, and my friend is nothing like this character. So that made it a little bit hard for me, but I got through it and now my battery's died. Yeah, the battery died. So we're back and I can't remember where I was. We were talking about Can You Keep a Secret by Sophie Kinsella. I think I was saying how I couldn't really get on board with the character because it's got the same name as a friend of mine. So that made it difficult. Also, it did frustrate me that every time that she said a line, which was often, she would cross her fingers and put them behind her back. And it said it in the book so many times. I was like, surely that is like really, really obvious. Surely everybody knows that she's lying all the time because she always does this every time she says something. But there we go. But yeah, in all fairness, this is kind of one of those sort of nothing books. It didn't really make any impact. It was neither good nor bad. You just sort of go through the process of reading it. So yeah, that's my opinion on Can You Keep a Secret. And the last book I read was The Unpredictable Consequences of Love by Jill Mansell, which again is a book that comes from a huge pile of books that my mum gave me. Jill Mansell is one of those authors that churns out a lot of books. I think I've read one before, but I don't know. And a lot of people feel about Jill Mansell as I do about Millie Johnson. But I can't get on board with that. She's no Millie to me. With Millie Johnson books I get completely sucked in and get so attached to the characters and things like that, and I didn't feel that with this book. Maybe it's just this one and maybe other Jill Mansell books are different, but I found that there were just too many characters. There was something like 8 or 9 main characters and you're following all of their stories through the book, and I mean it's not that big a book to follow 8 people in. It just means that you don't really connect as well with them because there's too many of them to follow, and their stories, they do get developed but not as much as if you're only following like 1 or 2 main characters and then have a host of others that come in and out now and again. It's just not quite as cohesive, I guess is the way to put it, because it could be like 4 chapters until you come back to their story again. But as I say, I didn't mind the book at all. It was nice. It was like clinging on to the last bits of summer because it's set in Cornwall by the beach and talks a lot about sunshine. Oh, sorry, I'm distracted by a pigeon. Talks a lot about like sunshine and being on the beach and stuff like that. So I really did feel like I was clinging on to the last bits of summer, particularly as I finished this book this morning before filming this. And as I said earlier, it's very grey and very windy and a bit cold. I think part of my problem with this book is the character of Jack. He is supposed to be this like wonderful guy who really cares for Sophie, who's one of the many characters in this book, and that he loves her dearly, and even though she won't date him or whatever because of things that have gone on in her past, he's always there and he helps and this, that and the other. But I found him just a bit unsavoury, a little bit creepy, the way he went about things. The way that he'd like go behind her back to find out information that she didn't want to share, and like creepily watch her from a distance and stuff like that. I think that's part of the reason why I couldn't fully get on board with this book. I would say, like Can You Keep a Secret, The Unpredictable Consequences of Love, long title, is also a sort of nothing-y book. I didn't have many opinions on it, other than the fact that I thought there was too many characters and I wasn't that keen on Jack, even though he's supposed to be this absolutely lovely dreamboat guy. But there are some really nice sort of scenes in it. They may not come together quite as well as they should. I just think she focused on too many people and too many different kinds of stories. It wasn't that it didn't make sense or that it was jumbled, it was just too much. It's like she had all these, I feel like she could have split some of these into like 3 different books and they would have been perfectly good and perfectly well-formed books, but following the same characters. Sorry to harp on about her, but like Millie Johnson did, there are always characters from other books where they've been the main character popping up. So in the last one I read, there were people from the one about the cleaning company, which I can't remember, turning up in this one as sort of second tier characters, and that works really well because it feels like it's one world, but there's lots of stories for you to tell. I feel that Jill Mansell probably should have done that with this book and told the stories in couples. So they should have done the Jack and Sophie story, the Dot and Lawrence story, the Tugler and Riley story as separate books, and just had them as sort of like a series within the same world, if that makes sense, even though it's not fantastical or anything, it's set in a normal place in Cornwall. But yeah, and the ending was sweet. I liked the ending. Everybody likes a happy ending, and this one had one. So there we have it. There's my opinions on The Unpredictable Consequences of Love and all the books that I read in the month of September. We're now moving into the colder and darker months of the year, so we'll see how we get on. I think we've got some darker books to read. Maybe not darker, one of them's Hocus Pocus, which I've saved deliberately for October, but there you go, spoiler for what's coming up next month. So if you've enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, please go ahead and subscribe, and I will hopefully see you on the channel for the vlogs I do every Sunday and these kind of videos every other Wednesday. But if you're only here for the book reviews, I'll see you next month. Bye!